serve our fatherland with love and strength and faith. The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and might, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Youth and Social Development, the Vice Co-Host, Mrs. Yohane Faluga, and her counterparts, Vice Co-Host, Dr. Segun Ogboye, the Special Advisor to the Governor on Education, pardon my omission, sir, Honorable Tokunbo Wahab, all the Permanent Secretaries here present, particularly the Captain of the Body of Permanent Secretaries, Mr. Segun Ajibade, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, Dr. Mrs. Balogun, who then added it to her twin sister, Mrs. Yohane Faluga. The Permanent Secretary, Information, Permanent Secretary, Education, and the violinist and the choir master, the Permanent Secretary, Office of Establishment, Training and Pensions, Permanent Secretary, Civil Service Commission, the Permanent Secretary, HSC, not forgetting our Chief Medical Director of LASUTH, our own dear Professor O. Babanwo, the Senior Special Assistant to the Governor of Health, Ms. Dr. Kovidais, Directors in the Ministries of Youth and Social Development and the Ministry of Health, our wellness champions across our service, our very, very, very important members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We observe a solitary moment of silence for some of our dear colleagues that we have lost through failed battles with mental wellness and mental well-being. One in particular strikes me because it was probably the primary reason why I decided to take on this initiative at the time. One of our directors in the Ministry of Youth and Social Development at the time, a fine gentleman who was meant to be a wellness champion, a guidance, a counselor, someone who was meant to be assisting members of staff and the general public in balancing their mental wellness, in ensuring that they didn't suffer from depression, violence, domestic violence, sexual abuse, all forms of, stress, depression, all of the varying symptoms of mental wellness, or the lack of it. And, he was one of those directors who you would never know had any issues. He was counseling people, but we didn't realize until we paid the ultimate price that he also needed counseling. He was heading our center, our wellness center, not a wellness, a guidance center, family social center, FSS office in Aguda in Surulere. And we located him there because on our records, he was living in Yaba. And so it was only a 15 to 20 minute commute to his office. And we tried to do deployment and posting along using various mechanisms and reasons. And that was the primary reason for his own. Little did we know that this gentleman was commuting from Abeokuta to Abuja every day. He didn't have any residence in Lagos, and the residence he was living in, which we only discovered when we lost him, was an uncompleted building in Abeokuta, and that was where he was commuting from. But he kept all of this to himself. He didn't share it with his friends. He didn't share it with his colleagues. Some of them are here. And I think at some point when you don't share, you carry the bulk of the problem on yourself. And at the end of the day, we lost Mr. Abraham to suicide. He hung himself and passed on. Those who have departed in similar circumstances, rest in peace. Thank you. I must commend and congratulate the Lagos State Ministry of Youth and Social Development and the Ministry of Health for its sustained effort in the actualization of the dream, which is in tandem with Pillar 2 of the themes agenda of this current administration. Ladies and gentlemen, this center was not established to create fear or stigmatize anyone who may be at risk or who may be experiencing prodromal symptoms of illness, or individuals with acute disorders, individuals in remission, and individuals who may not necessarily appear physically ill but may be challenged by daily routine functioning, demands, expectations on them either at work or at home, as well as other officers that may be overwhelmed by emotional relationship problems, as well as other mental or social, psychological issues. Many people with social disorders, such as anxiety, depression, and other social engagement issues, have negative internal dialogue in relation to how they may perceive or be perceived in by society. According to healthcare professionals, these negative thoughts often lead to negative behaviors, such as social isolation, absenteeism, lack of concentration, threat of violent behavior, including low productivity at work, and ultimately suicidal tendencies, to mention just a few. The center is therefore structured to ensure and enhance the welfare of Lagos State public servants to function effectively with the help of professionals as well as officers, ensure that officers attain satisfactory standards of mental stability as well as emotional and psychological well-being. The same quality of professional support service will be extended to the generality of the public, albeit in varying degrees. It is pertinent to state here categorically that in this center, the intervention will basically be psychosocial therapy and will not be targeted to treating symptoms alone, but the root causes of emotional/psychological challenges that are reported as well. The center is scheduled to provide a wide range of social support services and intervention through a community-based interdisciplinary mobile treatment team comprising of case managers, peer support workers, psychiatrists, social workers, psychologists, nurses, and vocational specialists. Psychosocial therapy has been shown to be a more effective form of intervention for mild mental issues arising from work or family-related issues and stress, rather than the use of antidepressants. The approach to treatment will be individually based and flexible, essentially determined by recovery goal in each case. The center, which will be open to all members of staff and only to members of staff, will operate call-in service, whereby staff will have the opportunity to seek help through designated phone lines, as earlier enumerated by the Honorable Commissioner, MySD. The lines will remain open 2 days a week at specified times. In the first instance, it is hoped that this strategy will encourage officers and staff who may be discouraged from seeking help for many reasons, out of some such as shame or the fear of stigmatization to report, seek and obtain critical help that they might need in a timely manner. The state government's focus is psychosocial well-being of its members of staff and a commitment to attainment of satisfying standards of life and health, including interpersonal as well as multi-dimensional social relationships in a way that will permit the full development of individual capacities and promotes total wellness of mind, body, and soul. It is my candid view that such commitment to the provision of social support infrastructure on the part of the Lagos State government towards ensuring emotional stability of public servants will go a very long way, not only in boosting our overall well-being as members of staff individually and collectively, but also enhancing the effectiveness and overall productivity of our workforce as a collective. Let me therefore use this opportunity to wholeheartedly appreciate and commend the Lagos State Governor, Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, for his dynamic leadership at this crucial period of this pandemic and his demonstrated commitment to this center in particular. Finally, while urging you all to continue your diligent observance of all safety protocols as laid down by the Nigerian Center for Disease Control and by the face of COVID in Lagos, Professor Kevayami, and the Lagos State Ministry of Health in preventing the spread of COVID-19 pandemic, it is my singular honor and pleasure to declare the Lagos State Employees Wellness Center open to the glory of Almighty God and to the benefit of our public service.
I'm highly delighted to welcome you to this occasion of the official launch of Lagos State Employee Wellness Center for the use of all civil servants in Lagos State. Today's event is a culmination of a series of concerted efforts brought about by the effective collaboration between the Ministry of Youth and Social Development, Ministry of Health, and of course, the head of service. It is only a healthy civil servant that can be productive. It is pertinent to state that the setting up of LASWELL by the present administration of Mr. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu is in line with the second pillar of the THIMS agenda. I must mention at this point that sensitization programs for all staff and a training program for 851 wellness champions selected from various ministries, departments, and agencies was held through the webinar to ensure staff are aware of the existence of the center and its benefits to their total well-being. These programs were held virtually on the 22nd and 24th of July 2020 respectively to properly set the stage for the full operation of the center. It is no longer news that due to the ever-increasing socio-economic challenges we are confronted with each day, both at the workplace and at home, the rate of depression has assumed an unprecedented dimension. This unfortunate trend has sometimes resorted to people taking antidepressant drugs, while others ignorantly consider suicide as a ready-made escape route. Of course, you will agree with me that none of these options, drug abuse or suicide, is good. Life itself is full of challenges. It therefore behooves every one of us to see light at the end of the tunnel. And this we hope we will achieve through optimal use of the LASWELL Center. This center will open Mondays to Fridays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The center will have on call during this period well-trained professionals equipped with the skills to examine, identify, and assess any mental or social issue and make referrals where necessary. Physical therapy, cognitive therapy, behavioral therapy, group therapy, as well as individual counseling are among the services that we render at the center. Since we cannot foreclose the possibility of an emergency situation, arising toll-free lines will be made available. The numbers will be disseminated through the official communication channels of the center. I want to implore all civil servants to take full advantage of the center as a way of regaining their self-confidence, self-worth, self-actualization, and full integration to the society, rather than throwing in the towel in the face of adverse situations. Finally, I want to thank our ever-supportive Mr. Governor, Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, our active and very efficient Honorable Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, and the entire Bell family in Lagos State.
I am personally very grateful to the leadership demonstrated here by our head of service, who I'm sure has had a better grip on the mental state of our civil servants, even better than the Ministry of Health by virtue of his position as head of service, and by virtue of him being in touch with all the peculiarities of the civil service, both the joys, but particularly the stresses, the constraints, and the anxieties. So I wasn't surprised when in cabinet our HMO, HOS, took the lead in this initiative to ensure that as a body of civil servants in the family of Alausa, that we are each other's keepers. There are stories of people exhibiting certain traits and characteristics that would obviously be to the layperson a sign of mental disturbance. But most importantly, we are particularly concerned about early detection and early intervention, and of course making the work environment a more conducive place, which thereby alleviates stress and of course increases your productivity. So it's funny that over the weekend my daughter cracked a joke. It was a very simple joke. She says, "Daddy, how do you become best friends with a squirrel?" And I said, "I don't know." She said, "Well, act like a nut." It sounds funny, but as people, we often have our anxieties, our idiosyncrasies, our stresses, and it's important that we identify these kinds of things through counseling. People sometimes feel that receiving counseling is a sign of mental illness and an introduction to being stigmatized. If you go to the Northern Hemisphere or to the United States, it's almost a normal thing for people to have a personal counselor because of the stresses of the modern day and age, the internet, the bombardment of information, the expectations at work. So I think this is the beginning of a very important initiative. Thank you very much. Primarily to early detection, counseling, and people dealing with their personal issues and not being afraid to come forward and receive appropriate and professional help in this kind of center. So on that note, I'd like to thank all of you for attending. I'd like to thank my colleagues on the high table, directors in the crowd, members of the press, and the HOS. Once again, we really appreciate your initiative. Thank you very much.
Everybody likes to think. And also because luckily over time in the African setting, the concept of family as it exists has always been like a very good support system, and people who have challenges and stresses always have people they can run to. But as we've become a little more European and times have become harder, I think everybody is beginning to mind their own business and leaving people to their own devices. So mental health issues are also becoming a problem here. Then in this background of this whole COVID thing, and the loss of income, loss of jobs, loss of health, and so many other challenges people are facing, I think this is the most opportune time for this kind of thing. So going to what the Laswell Center is about. It's an outpatient mental health and social care service for employees of the Lagos State Civil Service. It was established to create an integrated, evidence-based, recovery-oriented service delivery model that promotes resilience and the well-being of Lagos State government employees. By providing psychosocial support, the center also aims to improve workplace productivity. Just before I talk about exactly what services are available here, I know the Honorable Commissioner for Youth and Sports also alluded to the fact that we started with sensitization of all the civil servants in a webinar that was powered very gratefully by the Ministry of Establishment and Pensions, yes. And then we followed it by a training for wellness champions that were selected by the accounting officers of each of our ministries. I just want to point out again that sometimes those selections are based on, well, just who you think should attend. But as they come back to your ministry and we want to start implementing this, please take a look at your selection again. If there are people that you've chosen that are not really willing to be champions, this is not something you can force people to do. If they're not willing, please look for people that are willing to be champions, and we can do another training for them. But we want people who will, because they're going to be the first bus stop, the first responder to such situations in ministries. And they must also be observant, because people may not come to you. You may be the one to notice these things and need to reach out to them to send them to the service. Now, the services available at the Laswell Center include counseling services for all employees, suicide prevention support service and initiatives that reduce stigma and discrimination, alcohol and drug use intervention, assessment for and treatment of mental disorders, well, mainly referral for treatment of mental disorders. The assessment goes there and then we refer for treatment. Then rights protection of employees with mental illness, advocacy and awareness. These services will be provided by psychiatrists, psychiatric nurses, clinical psychologists and social welfare officers who would assist members of staff in any and all behavioral health challenges. Employees of Lagos State can walk through the doors between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. to seek assessment or counseling, or book an appointment by calling the number which we will circulate, 0702 500 2756, or by emailing the Laswell Center at lagostate.gov.ng. Employees can also be referred by their ministries, departments, or agencies, especially the wellness champions in those ministries, following an observable change in their behaviors and a subsequent reduction in productivity. Services will be available to all employees of the Lagos State government. So it's a no discrimination policy. Any member of the Lagos State government civil service is absolutely welcome, and we will be grateful for referrals from the champions, from the accounting officers, from anybody who feels that someone may benefit from the service, especially if their productivity begins to slip at work. So thank you very much for listening.